Ananda Gauranga and Dwarka Devi Dasi, and to thank this great opportunity to be with you this afternoon. Our topic is interesting. It's just something that I thought would be attractive in a way, because we see it's all pervasive, and it's about gossip. I started writing a poem. Now, I usually don't do this until I'm completed, but I just want to get your approval or disapproval thus far. First of all, I'd just like to open up with, let's say, some mantras, pranam mantras to our Guru Maharaj, founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada, then to the Panchatattva, God in 5 features, and then to Krishna in basically 2 features, as Radha and Krishna. So we'll start, if you know the words, the mantras, please, we'll do it together. Nama Om Vishnuvadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminita Namane Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Shri Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So thank you very much. So I would just like to open up with this poem that I started writing and haven't quite completed, but it's just, it'll help build up some momentum for me on this particular topic. So here we go. Gossip is the occasion or occupation. Let's take that off. Off to a bad start. Okay. Gossip is the occupation of a jerk, a career on part and full-time work. It is one thing to suffer from verbal diarrhea. It's another to rumor monger about Jack, who's drunk on tequila, especially when it's not true. Gossip is casual, unconstrained reports on what you did not do. Example, Sasha, did you hear the latest about Judy? Well, I found out about it from Nancy, who heard it from Rudy. She's got a crush on Scott, something you must know, while Ben is planning to sexually stalk Joe. Well, how did you know? Or how do you know? Well, I heard it. I just know. No, well, what's going to happen, do you think? I'll get back to you after I check on my link. Stories like the above can create a life so tense, but it comes down to a practice of real nonsense. Rumor is a devil's radio, a toxic tongue. Anyone subjected to it better go and run. A human problem. There must be an answer. It's rampant, absurd, becomes a cancer. Fake people have nothing real to say. Fabrications from the mouth is always on their display. Thank you. We'll elaborate on that later on, but just for starters. Yes, so terms like toxic tongue, and perhaps you've heard the phrase verbal diarrhea. That means an individual who talks and talks and talks, and they do not shut up. You know? And usually the subject matter is something that's not very congenial to progressive life. And what is progressive life? That kind of life which encourages spiritual advancement, spiritual development. Here we are a spiritual being. We're entrapped in a body. We're trying to make sense of this world. And we're trying to extract the truth of it so that maybe we can get to the other end and go to a better place. But when some things stand in the way, and one of them is misinformation, which is what gossip is normally. It's misinformation. And it really creates a hurdle for those who want to make spiritual progress. And I'm sure that you have observed things like I have, that when people get on and talking about other individuals to you, they'll end up talking about you. You will be the butt of gossip. Because people are on this roll with rumor mongering. It's so toxic to the point that it's like very habit forming, and it's a basic like an addiction. It's an addiction, and people tend to get away with it for a long time, or at least there's some mileage there, until the rumors come back on the individual, the initiator. I'll give you an example. When I was in, the last time I walked across Canada, I was in Alberta. And that was in the spring of 2014. And I was entering Alberta, getting really close to the mountains. And it's an area where it's not really flat necessarily. Even as you get close to the mountains, there's lots of valleys and dips in the earth and so on. Like the terrain is very interesting, but because of the way the wind comes at you, the winds are very strong. They sort of funnel through the mountains and they kind of just hit you almost to the point of taking you off your feet. So there's this one town, maybe even considered a small city, called Pincher Creek. And it's kind of very in the southern part of the province. And my support guy, he went ahead, which what he normally does, he checks to see what's going on in the town. He drives ahead and he looks to see what are the clubs that are operating and social clubs. And so we found that there was the Lions Club. And so we went ahead and contacted them. And even though there wasn't much prior notice, the Lions Club accepted our coming to visit and to talk a little bit about Tales from Trails. It was very nice of them. So I don't know how often they get together. Maybe it's once a month. I can't imagine it's weekly, but once a month. This sounds workable, I guess. So I got there and, they gave me the platform, they gave me the stage, so to speak, they gave me the microphone. And so I was talking about, that I was on the 4th walk across Canada and some of the reasons for walking across the nation. And I said, well, the usual things, which is all true. I was walking, it's a thing for my health. I'm walking for my guru. It would be his 100th birthday. I was just reflecting on my first walk in 1996. And then one thing I said is that one of the reasons I walked was because I just had to get away from my community. They were gossiping too much, making ugly stories. And so anyways, from there on, I described some of the pastimes of walking, which is all quite adventurous and fun and so on like that. So after I was speaking, there was a real nice entree of vegetarian food for me and my support guy. And one elderly gentleman came and he said, hey, so you were saying about the gossiping going on. I'll tell you a story, and it's not a gossip. He said, okay, so there's the town gossip. Her name's Mildred. And she just talks about everybody, right? So then she made up this story about Jack, who, fine man, good quality person, family man, responsible, likable, etc. And she made a story about how he's on a binge, like he's drunk all the time. And so the rumor went around all over town, and usually the person who's being talked about is the last person to find out. And so in this case, Jack heard that he was suddenly a drunkard. And, he said, one of his friends said, "Did you know everybody's talking about you?" He said, "No, I didn't know." "Yeah, they're saying you're an alcoholic." He said, "I didn't know that." "Who's saying it?" "I don't know." But, so Jack had to do a little research, a little investigation, play Sherlock Holmes. And so he went around and finally he found it ended up coming from Mildred. So he went to her door and knocked on her door. I said, "Mildred, I'm Jack, and there's people that have been talking about me. And it seems to me that everything points in the direction of you making up the story, that I'm an alcoholic, which I'm not." So Mildred, then her excuse or defense was, "Well, you were parked just outside the pub one night recently, all night long you were parked there." I said, "Okay, Mildred, thank you very much." So then Jack had to think about what to do. So he came up with a solution to the problem. And he said, he planned it out. He parked his vehicle in front of her house, and left it there all night long. Okay. So I guess you can understand the nature of the story. And so Mildred learned a lesson, at least for a time. And that, she realized that maybe we shouldn't be so loose with our tongue. Good. So there's some really nice stories in the Vedas about people talking about everyone, the common person, from the common person to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Like in the Krishna book, or what we sometimes call the Srimad Bhagavatam 10th Canto, we hear, I'm taking a little extract from the story of the Syamantaka jewel. Usually where there's jewels and gems and diamonds, there's always going to be trouble to follow you. There's lots of, let's say, sayings in different cultures about, like in some places they talk about a ghost being in a diamond. There's always going to be trouble wherever there's valuable, precious stones. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But in this case, it's true. Okay, so here I'm just taking a little excerpt from the Krishna book. The false rumor that Krishna had killed Prasena and taken away the jewels spread everywhere like wildfire. Krishna did not like to be defamed in that way, and therefore he decided that he would go to the forest and find the Syamantaka jewel, taking with him some of the important inhabitants of Dwarka. Krishna went to search out Prasena, the brother of Satyajit, and found him dead, killed by the lion. So we've just given you a little bit of like a little piece, a little parcel of this story, which is very interesting. It involves a king, a lion, a jewel, and Krishna himself. So Prabhupada translates as wildfire. Rumors about people are very devastating. They can actually kill a person's life. People have lost their jobs, their families, on the basis of rumor, or even part truth. You can say, okay, there's some part truth to it. There's an occasion where our guru, Srila Prabhupada, founder of the movement, he came up against a challenge when one of his disciples, who was a sannyasi, fell into some weakness. He couldn't maintain his vows of being a sannyasi. And that means vows of celibacy and so on like that. He became friendly with a lady. Okay, so it's true. This is what happened. He he actually became a victim to Maya, you can say. But he was a good man, and Prabhupada never rejected anybody who would fall prey to Maya in a sensual way. If someone was philosophically off and speaking as a representative of the Bhagavat school, Bhakti Yoga, etc., and like vilifying or criticizing even, say, some of the teachers in what we call the parampara, the disciplic succession, Prabhupada would reject that person. He would really be upset. He would be very upset. But knowing the nature of the beast, the material existence, the nature of the flesh, that we become prey to the flesh sometimes, or at least it's in our thoughts, it's understood. And Prabhupada was getting quite upset about the fact that devotees were talking so much about this, once sannyasi or former sannyasi. And he said, you've made it so difficult for him to come back to the temple and to visit. You made it so hard. You've been talking too much. And then in relation to this incident, in the 8th canto of the Bhagavatam, Prabhupada talks about the struggle between Gajendra, the elephant, and the crocodile. And the fight between the elephant and the crocodile can be really, really intense, to the point where you wonder who's going to win in this battle. The elephant is more of an animal creature that thrives on the land, a crocodile more so in the water. So it looks like the crocodile was becoming the victor. And then Gajendra, did the honorable thing to pray to Vishnu, please save me, as he was losing ground, so to speak, or in this case, water. So Prabhupada was saying that if you struggle in your spiritual life, don't give up the struggle, even if there's like some mishap. Continue the fight against Maya. So Prabhupada's message was about that to the sannyasi. Continue to fight against the onslaught of the material energy and its illusions and its temptations as a grihasta, as a married person. So that's the idea, is that no one should be shunned for losing a grip on the fight against Maya. We understand. Krishna explains, Abhijit Sudaracharo Vajati Mam Ananyapak, which means that if someone commits an abomination, they can be forgiven if they're rightly situated. Rightly situated means you have regret, remorse, you have feelings, guilt. I didn't mean to do it. I won't do it again. That kind of sincerity and integrity has to be displayed to convince the people around the victimized person. This thing about gossip, there's a saying in native tradition that never let the mouth get in the way of your 2 ears. And that simply means that you spend more time hearing, taking in wisdom, absorbing wisdom, as opposed to talking about fabrications, things that may not be real, things that are going to be hurtful to others. Yeah, so gossip hurts. And nothing ill should be spoken about others, especially those on the spiritual path. In the list of 10 offenses against chanting the name of the Absolute, of Krishna, is do not find fault with those who are making a great endeavor to share this wisdom, this Krishna consciousness. It's at the top of the list of the 10 different offenses against chanting. So, on the internet, for instance, we hear sometimes, people speaking very pejoratively about other devotees, and they make it a habit. You wonder, where do they find the time to do this? Aren't you busy? Don't you have a job? Don't you have kids to raise? And but some people make it what they consider it's a service. The truth has to be told. Okay, maybe there is some truth to it. But how does it help a person to correct himself or herself if one is blabbing all over the place, all over the universe and through the internet, which is a world of indescribable, let's say, non-defense mechanisms where you don't know how to defend yourself. And once you do, it's like a cat and a dog fight, It's just like they start to snarl and bark at each other, the accuser against, and then when you start, like if you're the recipient, if you're at the tail end of you're the one being talked about, once you get into that habit of trying to constantly defend yourself, there's no end to the negativity, to the tamagun, the mode of ignorance. One thing we can say about gossip is that it is a feature of Kali Yuga. It's something that people do. It's something that, before we got on the call here, I was talking to a couple of devotees there that saying only humans do this, Animals, they bite, they sting, they snarl, they run away when they're some adversary is at them. And that's it. That's all. It's plain and simple. It's clear. Wow, it's nice. But when you use this weapon, which is a lethal weapon of creating a rumor, it's something that is so devastating. It's almost like you cannot turn the table around. You can't turn the tide. And well, one thing that people should know, those who are rumor mongers, and they use that fabricated stories, as a weapon to belittle someone, they should know that it's really like a boomerang. And a boomerang is sort of like a twisted device that when you throw it into the air, it just comes and makes a return back to you, to the sender. It's a device that's used by Aboriginal folks in Australia for many years. It's a unique little thing. So if we understand karma and how it works, that whatever you put out there, positive reactions will come. You put something negative out there, negative will come. You're shooting yourself in the foot by engaging in rumor mongering. And it goes on. I mean, Srila Prabhupada, he was criticized. But people were saying, his own dear godbrothers were saying, oh, look what he's doing, He's initiating these Western people, and he's allowing women to go on the altar, and he's even giving sannyas order, to these Americans. And so, Prabhupada's left to hear this kind of jibber jabber and to ultimately dismiss it, taking a humble position and leaving it so that time will reveal the truth about matters. And of course, it, admittedly so, it wasn't always just a perfect scenario for some people who couldn't keep up the momentum. But by and large, we have to look at the big picture. The International Society for Krishna Consciousness became successful. People, especially who follow through, did remarkable things, And even though they may not be perfect, they did remarkable things. And let's put it this way: if someone has a flaw in their character, in their situation, it can be corrected, by the right person. So if we're looking for a solution to this issue about how to correct the toxic tongue, then use the tongue in a positive way. Use it to describe the glories of the Lord. Use it to engage in Krishna Katha. That's what you do with you and your big fat mouth. And if there is something that needs to be looked at that is somewhat incorrect in terms of behavior and so on, then perhaps the tongue can be used in a very tactful and pleasing way to correct the individual that is perceivably having some expressing human frailties. Come like a friend. I mean, talk like a friend. And, don't talk down on people, don't be condescending, but actually talk like a friend and open up. And this is a part of our Vedic culture. Rupa Goswami talks about it in his writings that, if you have confidence in someone, open up. If you're hurtful inside, meaning you've got some desire, something on your chest, you have to get it off your chest. So speak confidentially to such individuals, and even kind of confess, to the right kind of person, mind you. Like every community has to have honorable people, people who can will respect confidentiality. In the tradition that I come from, which is to be a Catholic, you could once a month go to the confessional, confess to the priest, and you go into like a box as a closet, and there's 2 units on either side, and during that time of what we call confession, you confess to the priest. And generally, like Prabhupada speaks about this practice, that if your heart isn't changed, you'll continue to sin. When there's no prayaschita, meaning no atonement, very little atonement will come, or blessings will come your way, unless you have a change of heart. But a person's heart will change if you're dealt with gently and not harshly. I cannot think of anything more harsh than... Is that someone? Okay, speaking ill about others. I've got some really nice quotes for you, which okay, so here we go. Fake people gossip about others. Real people mind their business. Here's another one. It's funny how the people that know the least about you always have the most to say. Another one. Surround yourself with people who talk about visions and ideas, not other people. Right? So this is a clear direction, which we find in the Shastras also, sadhu sangha. That means associate with good people, good-hearted, natured people, This one is really funny. If gossip were food, many people would be overweight. Always remember one thing. The one who gossips with you will gossip about you. Right. So again, if you hang around with people who are habituated to always talking about others, you're on their list. You're on the hit list. You're going to be victimized. So stay clear. Stay clear of such individuals. Again, humans do this. Animals don't. Gossip is a worse plague than COVID. It's a quote actually from Pope Francis, and I believe it. COVID-19, it's affected our lives in ways that we could not imagine. A lot of people, for a lot of folks, it's been very devastating. Loss of jobs, economical adjustments have had to be made, and it's a serious plague. But gossip is worse, and it's been around forever. Plagues come and go, pandemics come and go, epidemics are here and they're today, they're gone tomorrow. But gossip seems to be here to stay. Now, one thing I would like to say is that I've thought about it a few times, and I've, let's say, implemented this. I do initiate people. I give them diksha, and there's 4, let's say, strictures that you follow when you make your commitment to being a formalized devotee within ISKCON. You agree not to eat meat, fish, or eggs. You agree not to take any intoxication, no illicit sexual activities, and you agree not to gamble. You know, sometimes I feel like, and here's another one, you should agree not to gossip. You know, probably gossip is worse than all the 4 above mentioned, you know, wrapped together. I'm not exaggerating. I'm not gossiping. Here's another nice one. A healthy mind does not speak ill of others. We have better things to do. And if you want to speak ill of others, why don't you put 50% of that time and effort about talking about yourself? You don't have any problems. You don't have any human frailties. You know, you're perfect. You're God. Okay. No, obviously everyone makes mistakes. So speak about those mistakes if you want to talk about other people's mistakes. Right? People are quick to believe the bad things they hear about good people. This is another thing. Our mind is like a sponge that absorbs all the negative things about other people. You know, like a magnet, we are attracted to negativity, to those things that are, just in the mode of ignorance. We're attracted to that. A lot of money is made on the big industry is super big about talking about people. And this is what some individuals have done. They'll write about their famous mom or their famous dad and write a whole novel about things you didn't know about Mr. Famous so-and-so or Miss Famous glamorous movie star. And then they'll make a movie, it'll turn into a movie. And that time everyone's, felt, I've got the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. So great. Now I'm enlightened. But enlightenment doesn't mean that you've got the scoop on the dirt. That's not what it means. Enlightenment means, in fact, the opposite, that you start to glorify others, especially the Supreme. It's a glorification. You start to worship. We call it worship. But worship is better than worship. You got to worship. That means you're going to war. You're going to battle. You're going to create conflict. We have to try to get away from conflict. A human being has a right to do that. We have this elasticity about us. Human beings can be very, very pure, and you can find some human beings that are clearly scumbags of the earth. All time, the worst creatures on the world. And people won't doubt that. That's human beings are the worst creatures on the planet. We mess it up big time, all the time. Even in our community, we just buy plastic. Everything's in plastic bags. There must be a better way to do it. We buy into the sin. So I think gossip is a major sin. Here's we just have a little bit more. People of greatness don't have time to gossip. Kala, time. It's a very important, let's say, aspect of life. It's one of the 5 discussion points in the conversation between Krishna and Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita. Time. How do you use your time? Please understand that God is time. So don't waste it away. Shrama eve kevalam. Don't waste time. That's a verse from the Bhagavatam. Don't waste time. And gossip is a major way to do that. So, I've come to this point. to realization that gossip is the most deadly weapon of all. And some people are really good at it. It's just like a weapon that you may have. You may polish it, you may sharpen it, you may tune it up, whatever it takes. And yet, when you release it, the ammunition, it's actually going to come to haunt you. It will come like a boomerang to haunt you. And this is where understanding of karmic reaction has to come into play. It has to become a reality in our lives. What you put out will definitely come back full circle, back to you. So karma is actually defined in the Bhagavad Gita, and Prabhupada puts it like this when Arjuna asks, what is karma? It's an action pertaining to the development of the material body. So when we put out negative stuff, basically you're building up your future, and it won't be a bright one. You are stacking up stuff for the new body that you're creating. And I think some of us will agree some bodies are pretty wretched. We can hold our nose high and in pride, say, I'm a human, I'm part of the best. I'm a part of the dominant species of life. But yeah, that might be so, but dominance, what kind of dominance? Is it a reckless one? Or is it a, let's say a constructive one? So we have to be constructive. As devotees, we need to be constructive. To be constructive for our own well-being and for those around us, we have to stop talking bad about others. And that holds true too for when we talk about people who are not followers. The worst thing I think spiritual seekers can do is that once they've been sort of accepted into this spiritual circle, now they start talking bad about everybody else. Oh, those heavy karmi meat eaters. And no, I mean, you can make a point that it's not good to loathe, the sin, but not the sinner. Like my parents are meat eaters. They were meat eaters, and that's what they were born with. I cannot criticize them. I have to look at all the beautiful things they did for me. I have to zero in on the positive and not the negative. And that's what Prabhupada taught us. So I think that we need to take this kind of seriously. And I'm saying it because people tend to speak about others very forcibly. And even if you're not a rumor monger, if you catch someone doing it, always gossiping, it might be a good idea. Yeah, you'll get a few spiritual brownie points for helping to correct that person. This is not appropriate. It's not proper. It's not going to get you to Vaikuntha, to Krishna's abode. Krishna will accept people who have a certain level of purity about them. And it's not this negative stuff. Madchita madgata prana puriyanta parasparam kultiyatasya mam nityam tushanti cha ramanti cha. That's from the 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. And it's verse number 10, talking about what devotees do. And what did they do? They talk positively about Krishna. They talk positively about Krishna's abode, his paraphernalia, and even his devotees. So we should see the whole world not as, let's say, outsiders. Newcomer might be a more friendly term, these karmis, these bad people. We should see them as being devotional. Because deep down inside they are, right? And all it takes is a little bit of friendly mannerisms, in our behavior and gestures that express to them to help them come around and to come to their original constitutional position. So there are two positions, conditional and constitutional. Conditional means when we're caught up in, let's say, the three modes of material nature, and when we're very entrapped and imprisoned by our own desires. Constitutional position is the other kind of living being, refers to I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. I'm a dharmic person. Dharma is a beautiful word that we have to embrace and abide in like anything. And to be a good dharmic person, we cannot be critical of other people. We cannot criticize. So those who criticize, they will be crucified on some level. Yes, we will go to some of the depths of the world where there's lots of torture coming your way, and we don't need that anymore. We're tortured by our own desires as it is. So let's make a change in our lives. Yeah. You know, nobody is spared of rumor, as we mentioned. Prabhupada was rumored about, Krishna, Ram, you know, Ravana saying, oh, Ram's weak, Sita, you know. So succumb to me. Ram's nothing. He's lost. He's in the forest. You know, he lost his kingdom. He's been dethroned, etc., etc. Making up all kinds of stories, not knowing the truth. So let the truth be spoken, and so engage ourselves in reading Shastra. And this is one way to overcome the very bad habit of speaking badly about others. So if you live in a glass house, don't throw stones at someone else who lives in a glass house. You want to talk ill about people, begin with yourself. So thank you very much. We spoke on this topic, and perhaps some of you very enlightened devotees out there have something to say. And please, you can reiterate maybe some of the things I said. And if you have some questions also, that's fun. And if you'd like to reinforce the message that I gave, please, you can say, I like what you said about blah, blah, blah. So for these next few minutes, you're totally open and free to speak on this topic. And I apologize, there were some interruptions. I had a couple of people trying to call in, and that means that my voice may have been cut off. But so there you go. Thank you, Srila Prabhupada.
Thank you,
I guess
Maharaj.
we can begin the questions. Thank you, Ananda Gaurangaji.
Thank you, Maharaj. So again, this is a very important topic, and that's why, you know, we wanted you to speak on this topic, Maharaj. It's not something that is prevalent outside of ISKCON or God consciousness. It's it's prevalent everywhere within you know, our devotee congregation as well. So that's why it's very important that you spoke on this topic, Maharaj. So we're really thankful for that. For the illuminating discussions that you provided on this topic. So there is one question here through the chat. It would be easier to forgive the mishaps of spiritual leaders if they were considered more as spiritual guides rather than spiritual master. Thoughts? So there is a question, there is a direct question that had come. So the question is, it would be easier to forgive the mishaps of spiritual leaders if they were considered more as spiritual guides than spiritual masters.
Wow, that's heavy. Right. So you want me to just comment on that, I guess, right? Is that
yes, Maharaj.
Okay. The inference of what's coming out of that phrase is that spiritual master, meaning we give honor and praise to someone who's you know, merely human. You know, you could correct me if I'm wrong. But if we look at our spiritual teachers as actual guides, coaches, etc., mentors, then maybe that would be better if a better approach to looking at those who are helping you on the spiritual path. You can correct me if I'm off track, but yeah, spiritual guide maybe is a good appropriate term to describe somebody who's really helping you. Whereas when we say master, it may conjure up thoughts about, oh, here's someone's always, very famous, getting so much attention, so much glory. If we look at our teachers, somebody who's really like a helper, an assistant, as opposed to somebody that was like an idol that we have to glorify, then maybe that's a better, way to regard somebody in that status. Is that correct?
Thank you, Maharaj. So I think he had sent it through a direct chat. So if this Prabhu's got a follow-up question, we'll wait for him to ask. And Maharaj, as a positive reinforcement, what you suggested was very helpful as well, where we hear about the verses Satashri, Krishna Namadi, etc., where we use the tongue to honor the prasadam, to chant the verses, etc. And even in Bhagavad Gita 17:15, austerity of speech, where it says, continue the rumor, right? So it's all about what is truthful, pleasing, beneficial, etc. And as you rightly said, Maharaj, it's undefendable. The person who somebody is gossiping about, he doesn't even know, and by the time it reaches his ears, it's exaggerated, beyond imagination. So it metamorphosized by the time it went to that person. And we have this in our work. There is something called as telephone game. So initially it said, two balloons, air balloons burst. And then when it goes, that message had to be transmitted from one person to another person who's in the next room, etc., etc. By the time the last person heard, is like, there were 2 people dead because of gunshot wounds. So this telephone game, this is how this will go about this person. So thank you so much, Maharaj. So maybe if devotees are unable to type the question, especially devotees who are relative newcomers, if you have a question for Maharaj, would you be able to ask Maharaj by unmuting yourself, especially newcomers? We have devotees who are regularly asking questions. We just wanted to give that opportunity to someone else who's not asked a question, especially not in Toronto area. If you're in Mauritius area, would you like to ask a question by unmuting yourself? Anyone else? Okay, now we'll open it up. Anybody in the Toronto area? We still have 10 more minutes, and this is a great opportunity for us to get the answers from Maharaj on this very important topic.
I'm really impressed. I'm really impressed that you got some people from Mauritius. Wow.
And Maharaj, the way you explained it, it's very clear, very practical as well with examples. You mentioned about karmic reactions as well. This is not to scare anybody, but it's a reality of matter. Like it comes back like boomerang. And it may not be like a rumor will be on that person, spread on that person who created some rumor against somebody, but it can be in various other forms. It doesn't have to be in the form of a rumor back on that person or gossip about that person. So it's important that we understand the bigger picture here. And as you said, Maharaj, the only time people dislike gossip is when you gossip about them. That's when they dislike. Otherwise, they seem to relish those. So that's what we wanted to tackle today. So Mother Dwaraka, you have a question?
I was going to ask Maharaj that when we hear that somebody is gossiping about us, Maharaj had said earlier that we can approach them and talk to them nicely, right? But I think it's very difficult situation, because if somebody is gossiping about you and you approach them, it causes a bigger problem, because they want to doubt, and it's like never ending. So my talk on this is that if I heard somebody gossiping about me, I just pray for them that Krishna give them the intelligence that they can realize one day they're doing something wrong.
Yes, I would support what you're saying. I do believe that's a particular approach that some people can take, is that don't, kind of raise malice against that person, but have a feeling for them and, pray, take a humble position that hopefully there's some realization will come to them that they'll be able to, quit some of these bad habits. Approach it from the heart. Yeah, that's always a good way to go. Vaishnavas do have that soft heart, and it's not that we're there to come and retaliate necessarily. We're here to strike back. The truth has to be told. That seems to be that's what everybody wants to go for. Is the world must know what the actual facts are. And yes, it's nice if somebody can do that. If you have some people to help you in a social situation, if you have some people there that can help to protect those from being harmed, great. Kshatriyas are there for that reason too. But I think when Brahminical people, like those of us who are actually coming together to hear a little bit about truth, whether you have a Brahminical status or not, doesn't matter. We're here to hear the truth. And the truth is that there is a God and that I'm small and everything else is tall. Everything is big. I'm small. And that should compel me to service. And that's another verse from the Gita, chapter 10, text 9, where you see the power of the absolute, and therefore I will now commit myself to serving that which is greater than me. Yeah, taking a humble position. This is the way to go. So your suggestion or recommendation to take that humble position and get into a prayerful mood it's really wonderful. Yeah, and I think that people will be impressed by the show of genuine humility. And that one is not ready to, let's say, strike back at and have a vicious, malicious approach to reacting to everything that comes your way that's so negative. Yeah. A lot of people can learn from behavior. It's not always what comes from the mouth, but they can learn a lot by conduct, human conduct. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Mother. Thank you,
Thank
Maharaj.
you, Maharaj.
And also where you said, Maharaj, these are, like to repeat that gossip is, worse than, worse plague than COVID. And you mentioned about, I think, Pope mentioning that, and you mentioning that gossip, can be considered worse than the 4 regulative principles if it's not being followed. This is much worse as well. So these are, home run points that you're bringing up, Maharaj, on this very important topic. So if anyone else has got any more questions or comments for Maharaj, we have a few more minutes of Maharaj's time. And Maharaj, you also mentioned about rumor being a boomerang. So it can come back in many different ways, not just in the form of a rumor or gossip, but could be physical, many other different ways as well.
Well, one thing that I'd like to say too, in addition, is that some people feel that a level of importance comes their way if they're an informant. I'm reporting back to you. I'm like your local broadcaster. I know so much about the community and the people in the community. It gives them some level of importance until people get upset and they find that, no, this is detrimental in our community. We don't want this kind of stuff, And so it just seems to be that the truth should be told, and that God is great, Krishna is wonderful, and instead of putting everybody else down. It's a low level individual will say, I'm going to prop myself up, and the way to do that is to put someone else, drag someone else down. Yeah, it's very evil. You know, one has to go through a few more births, I think.
Yeah.
Unless they get really incredible mercy, like what the work David Dossi was talking about, like have compassion that that person's heart will change.
And when we hear classes like this, Maharaj, then we are able to see through these things. You know, sometimes subconsciously, you know, devotees may be hearing these things, and then when we have classes like this, then we know, okay, he's not more, you know, he's like a fool, right? Like as Prabhupada mentions in the second chapter, fool is undiscovered as long as he does not speak. And here is this person gossiping about others, so we'll be able to understand and see through that and be meaningful in speech and not mean. In what we speak as well. So there's one more follow-up question, Maharaj. What's worse? What's a worse sin than gossip?
I can't think of one. I really can't think of one, honestly, to be honest with you. And going back to the 4 regular principles, the point that was made earlier on about I can follow the principles and I feel myself to be high and mighty, but let it be known that if you have this self-righteous attitude, like holier than thou, I'm better than everybody else because I do this and I follow these, you know, these points. Well, you're not very progressed. That's all. You're just not very. It's humility that is the true sign of spiritual development, not pride, not pride.
And you're just opening our eyes, Maharaj, on this very important topic, and we are getting wiser. And it says gossip dies when it hits a wise person's ear. So, so this is really good, Maharaj. We're getting a lot of feedback about the answers that you have given us, enlightening answers on this very important topic. So we're almost at the top of the hour, Maharaj. So again, we are very grateful for giving us your valuable time in spite of going through this knee surgery just few days ago. And we wish you a speedy recovery, Maharaj, and we will want to hear from you again in the very near future. So on behalf of all the devotees, Maharaj, we'd like to thank you.
And I'd like to thank all the Scarboroughites and that you will have a lovely Rath Yatra coming around the corner. And I'll try my best to be part of that. Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you so much,
Thank you,
Maharaj.
Maharaj. Thank
Shri
you.
Maharaj, thank you.
Prabhupada ki jai.